A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show. You're on GBNews, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Today, 17 billion in tax giveaways, a promise of 1.6 million new homes and help for first-time buyers. Rishi Sunak launches Manifesto at Silverstone today. Will it rev up voters or will the wheels come off the Tories' election campaign? And in response to the Prime Minister's bumper giveaway, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer extraordinarily branded it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto that would load everything into the wheelbarrow. Well, Sir Keir should know he backed two of Corbyn's manifestos in 2017 and 2019. And a man has been arrested after he threw lumps of rubble at Nigel Farage on the campaign trail in Barnsley. First milkshakes and now rocks. Do we have a serious issue with escalating political violence from the radicalised left? And talking of which, vegan activists from Animal Rising have caused a major beef by vandalising the King's new portrait to highlight what they consider to be animal cruelty at RSPCA-approved farms. And that's all coming up in your next action-packed hour. What was the show? It's all kicking off on the Tory manifesto trail. £17 billion of giveaways. Will it be enough to tempt you? Fangs can only get better, say the Labour Party. Now they're meddling with our children's teeth. And meanwhile, rocks are thrown at Nigel Farage on the campaign trail. First it was milkshakes, now it's rocks. The media seems obsessed with the far right. Have we got a bigger problem in the radicalised left? Talking of all kicking off, we'll be live at 3:30 at the training ground of the England team in Germany ahead of Serbia. That's at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. Rumours of 500 hardcore hooligans being shipped in to try and get it all kicking off at that match. We've got that all coming your next hour. Get in touch the usual ways. It is, of course, gbnews.com/your say. But before all of that, it's your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thanks very much and good afternoon to you. It's just after 3 o'clock. The top story from the newsroom this afternoon. Rishi Sunak has said he's not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him as he launched the Conservatives' manifesto. In an effort to get his general election campaign back on track, the Prime Minister promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts, including another 2p cut to national insurance. In total, those cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Well, Labour has called it a desperate wish list, but Rishi Sunak says he's the only leader in the campaign with bold ideas.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Sir Keir Starmer, though, has called the Conservatives' plan a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto and said that he wouldn't match the national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation, and what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
Sir Keir Starmer there speaking earlier this morning. Well, also in the Conservative manifesto, there was help for first-time home buyers with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was also a pledge to address the shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes, along with £8.3 billion to fix potholes and resurface roads. There'd also be a ban on smartphones in all schools, and on immigration, there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. While Rishi Sunak says that deterrent would be a key part of Britain's migration plan, clearing the asylum backlog, he says, within 6 months.
That is why if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security.
Jamie Oliver has said that a ban on the sale of energy drinks to young people would be a welcome relief for parents and teachers. The TV chef says he supports Labour's plan, which would see children under the age of 16 blocked from purchasing drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. Studies have shown that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause sleep disturbances as well as behavioural and mental health problems. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of public order offences. That's after objects were thrown at Nigel Farage during a campaign event late this morning. It's understood a coffee cup and possibly building rubble narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was on top of his party's battle bus in Barnsley town centre. Mr Farage was addressing supporters when he was then interrupted by a crowd of demonstrators. He's since said that he had been warned by police not to get off the bus. Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women he abused. The woman, who can't be named, is suing the disgraced pop star, whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015. That was for abusing her and two other young people between 1975 and 1980. Glitter was briefly released in February last year before being sent back to prison after allegedly attempting to access images of children on the dark web. International news, and the Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the United Nations last night. The UN Security Council backed the three-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas has said that the group will accept that deal and that it's now ready to begin negotiating over the details. Stick with us. That's the message to England fans from the squad ahead of Euro 2024. England's preparations for the tournament ramp up today after Gareth Southgate's side landed in Germany last night. That's after their defeat to Iceland in their final friendly, which saw them booed off at Wembley. They face Serbia in their tournament's opener on Sunday. And finally, they say that elephants never forget, but now researchers have found that they've actually got a particular skill for remembering names as well. New studies suggest the giant animals use individual rumbles to get each other's attention, similar to the way that we use names. Evidence shows them recognising and reacting to certain calls addressed to them and even ignoring calls addressed to others. Experts used a specialist signal processing technique to identify the subtle differences in each call. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's get stuck into the next 3 hours. And we start with Rishi Sunak and the Tories' attempt to turn the tide of this election campaign. Their manifesto includes some eye-catching policies, including a promise to halve migration. But it stopped short of saying that the UK could leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, I'm joined now by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome to the show. So the launch was live from Silverstone. It's fair to say Rishi was pretty revved up. The crowd was very, very appreciative. Loads of detail, loads of giveaways. Tell us the picture.
Hi, Martin. That's right. Well, here at Silverstone, and good afternoon to you on your show. Yeah, we've been hearing about the Tory manifesto here: clear plan, bold action, secure future. Much of which was announced today. We have heard before the party's been dripping out detail from this manifesto in what appears to be in a desperate attempt to try and get that polling up from the around 20% mark towards where Labour is in the 40s, and nothing has worked yet. And that's why much of what we heard today on GB News, when that was covered by the channel, and you hear a Formula One car racing past, by the way, Martin, we are at Silverstone. But much of what you've heard there is what we had briefed out recently by the Tory party. One area I thought was interesting was the lack of any kind of commitment on European Court of Human Rights withdrawal. If that court keeps obstructing attempts to deal with the illegal migration crisis, what will the government do about it? I asked the PM in the press conference after his speech whether he meant bold action. Well, why not be bolder, Prime Minister? And here's what he had to say.
Thanks, Chris. I've been clear throughout that I believe that our plan is compliant with all our international obligations. But I've also been clear, and the manifesto is crystal clear, that if we are forced to choose between the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, and our country's national security, then I'm going to choose our country's national security every single time.
There you have Rishi Sunak saying our country every time, our security over a foreign court, the European Court of Human Rights, jeopardising that security. But nothing more than that, not the bold play which may have worked for people who might be going towards the Reform UK party by saying let's get out of the ECHR if it gets in the way of that security. Nothing bolder in that sense. But afterwards I did bump into James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, and asked him about preparedness for the first flights taking off to Rwanda after the election if the Tories win on July the 4th. Here's what he had to say. How many flights will take off? How many people might take off by August if you win on July the 4th?
Well, the PM has made it clear that if we return a Conservative government, and only if we return a Conservative government, we have a regular drumbeat, multiple flights per month until the vote.
How many people? How many people?
Well, there's no upper limit to the Rwanda scheme, and we have made it very clear that the only thing that will stop those flights is a Labour government.
Thank you. There you have it, James Cleverly talking to us earlier here at Silverstone. The big news, I suppose, is plans to axe national insurance for those self-employed by the end of the next Parliament, by 2029. We knew about the 2% cut of national insurance for employees, like anyone who works for a big company. They want to halve migration and then bring it down with a cap going through the next Parliament. 1.6 million new homes, a Veterans Act, 30 hours of free childcare. But the concern might be that there's nothing in here to fire the imagination of the Tory base. How are they going to get people to wake up and listen and watch and pay attention to the Tory party? That we'll know more in polling this weekend after the Labour Party manifesto on Thursday, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chris Hope. Live from Silverstone. The big question now is, will it rev up the electorate or will the wheels come falling off? Chris Hope, always a pleasure, never a chore to have you on the show and to carry this conversation on. I'm joined now by the former Tory Minister, Paul Scully, who stood down ahead of this election. Welcome to the show, Mr. Scully. Thanks for your time. Are you there, sir?
I am indeed. Good to see you.
Hello, Paul. Always a delight to see you, my friend. Now then, the reaction to this from Sir Keir Starmer I thought was extraordinary. At the start of the day, Rishi Sunak said he wanted to channel his inner Maggie Thatcher, take the party back to the economics of Nigel Lawson. Sir Keir Starmer came out and said this was a Jeremy Corbyn-style giveaway, where the Conservative Party want to load the wheelbarrow with any freebie possible. Thatcher, Corbyn, which one is it?
No, to be fair, it's neither of those, because it's sorting out the problems of today, not of the 80s, and definitely not of Jeremy Corbyn, i.e. the 70s, frankly. It's sorting out the problems of today, and Rishi is a problem solver. What it's not doing, though, is there's a lot. It's, you know, he's shown that he needs to have more of a political bent about him, because that's some of the missteps that we've had in the last couple of weeks. And what this does, it answers some of the questions. I'm really pleased that they actually use the word rewarding risks for entrepreneurs, because if you're putting your money in where your mouth is and setting up a business and risking everything, you should be rewarded in the tax system. And so I'm really pleased that he's done the national insurance change for them, because not only does that help them and reward risk, it helps growth as well. If we get growth, then we start to pay down the debt and start to improve public services.
Paul, £17 billion in giveaways, including that national insurance cut you just mentioned. There's also 1.6 million new homes, speeding up of planning on brown sites, abolishing stamp duty and a new Help to Buy scheme, child benefit up to those £120,000. Lots and lots and lots of giveaways, 8,000 new bobbies with £2.8 trillion in debt. Where does the money come from for all of this?
Well, I think there's two things. There are some difficult choices that remain in terms of public spending, and there was an 8-page document that went along with the manifesto in terms of the costings of that. But clearly, as I was saying, a good amount of this has to come through growth as well, because we cannot continue where we are in terms of our trajectory around growth. You talked about housing. One of the things I wish I had seen was a little bit more about the supply side, about how we're going to speed up those planning reforms. And also, he's talking about giving away or scrapping stamp duty for first-time buyers. But actually, if you did something at the other end as well for older people who want to downsize, then whether you build houses or not, there are more houses come available for younger people who want to start families, etc.
I think you're dead right, though, Paul. It's OK doing an abolishment of stamp duty, a right to buy, but a right to buy what? Where are the properties? And if you're downsizing, you need to go to a medium-sized property. That means that people need to go down or up, and without that supply, we still have a logjam. Paul Scully, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company on GB News. Now, as I said a few moments ago, Sir Keir Starmer was scathing about the Tories' announcement, and here's what he had to say.
We have been absolutely clear that all our plans are fully costed, fully funded. We will not be increasing income tax, national insurance or VAT, so no tax increases for working people. None of our plans require tax rises. But this is coming from the party that's put tax to the highest level since, for 70 years. And they're building this sort of Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto where anything you want can go in it. None of it is costed. It's a recipe for more of the same, and that's why this choice of turn our back on this, turn the page and rebuild with Labour is so important. We've got 6 first steps. We're ready to go on July the 5th.
Well, Thatcher, Corbyn, it'll be Michael Foot before the day's out. I'll have lots more on the Tory manifesto throughout the show, and at 4:20, I'll speak live to a government minister. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much. Now, moving on to a very frightening incident today, and a man has thrown missiles at Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. The incident happened in Barnsley, where Mr Farage was campaigning ahead of the general election. A man ran away before police officers tackled him to the ground. It comes, of course, after a woman was charged with assault by beating and criminal damage when a milkshake was thrown over Mr Farage in Clacton-on-Sea last week. Well, let's speak now to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. It seems there's a pattern emerging here. First a milkshake, now a rock. Where next?
Well, indeed, and that, I think, is what Nigel Farage and indeed other politicians out on the campaign trail are concerned about. The potential for people to not just disagree with them verbally, but actually to get violent in trying to shut down the debate. Nigel Farage was on an open-top bus. He was going through Barnsley city centre in South Yorkshire on a campaign tour there. Someone near a local construction site who was just by the road there threw a number of objects. There was at least a coffee cup and wet cement amongst that. I spoke to Nigel Farage a little earlier. He thought there may have been a rock or a stone or something thrown as well. That person ran off and was very quickly apprehended by police. South Yorkshire police say that a 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of a public order offence in the first instance in relation to objects that were thrown at Nigel Farage from that construction site. Now, after this happened, below deck, Nigel gave a quick interview. He laughed it off, but it's clear that he's also deeply frustrated at what is happening now increasingly out on the campaign trail.
I'll tell you what I'm worried about.
Let me just make sure it's the right one.
If you think about this, a week after we commemorate D-Day, which was done so that we could live in a democracy, where we can agree to disagree, we can be very passionate, but agree to disagree. What we've now got is a mob that want to close down all debate. A mob that are prepared to use violence to achieve their goals. And that, for a democratic country, is very, very worrying indeed.
Be okay?
Me? Yeah. I'm used to it. I don't like it. Of course not. Because this is stopping me doing what I want to do. You know, I'm at my best going out, meeting people and talking to them, having debate with them. You know, going around the pubs or whatever I do. And these violent youngsters are stopping me. It's very, very frustrating.
It didn't hit you this time?
Didn't hit me this time, but yeah, I mean, you do wonder to what length these people will go.
And I think that is one of the concerns here voiced by Nigel, is the real worry that this could go a lot further. Of course, just a week ago, a milkshake was thrown over him. Some people laughing about that, of course. But that incident, as far as anyone on the receiving end of it, they don't know what the liquid is that's being thrown towards them. And of course, in this incident as well, there were harder objects than just a milkshake that was thrown at Mr. Farage. So there are real concerns about, as I say, not just what Nigel Farage may be facing at this very vulnerable time for politicians as they have to come face to face with members of the electorate when they're out on the campaign trail. It's what they want to do. They want to get their message across. But in doing that, there is that added risk that those that aren't just willing to verbally disagree with someone decide that they want to get violent with an individual as well.
Mark White, food for thought. We have a big problem with surging political violence in the UK. In my opinion, Mike Freer, his office was arson attacked in December last year. David Amos, of course, was killed. We talk all the time, Mark, about the far right. Do we have to have a conversation about the radicalised left and where that's going? Mark White, thanks for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to make this summer really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's 15 grand in tax-free cash and a whole host of other treats. You've got to be in it to win it. Here's all the details that you need.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, animal rights activists have attacked a painting of King Charles. They're vegans with a major beef. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters. And it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
There we go.
Yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
I'm surprised by that.
But women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex? Or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Earlier on breakfast.
You are at Silverstone. I can think of lots of analogies about car crash campaigns.
We've committed £100 million to the emergency dentist appointments, which will be paid for by closing tax avoidance.
We're now going to be delivering some pretty big tax cuts. We've already cut taxes for 29 million working people.
So education in schools hasn't changed to adapt to using technology, the way young people learn, their interests.
It is unbelievable, and Taylor Swift is so unbelievable that I've interviewed her and didn't remember it until Isabel or someone showed it to me.
From 6.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:26. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, later in the show, after Green parties across Europe were shunned by voters in the EU elections, I'll ask, does this spell the end for the Net Zero Brigade? But now to some incredible images. And animal rights activists have vandalised a portrait of King Charles. As you can see on your screens, campaigners from Animal Rising put a picture of the animated character Wallace from Wallace and Gromit over the King's face. And they added a speech bubble with words, "No cheese, Gromit. Look at all this cruelty on RSPCA farms." Well, I'm joined now by our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, welcome to the show. Another unsavoury incident. Can you tell us more about why it happened, who these people are? OK, Cameron's going to come. So basically, this portrait at the gallery, the Philip Mole Gallery in London, of course, this is recently painted, got a lot of headlines by Jonathan Yeo. The King absolutely adores this portrait, however, though, so much so he wants it hung in Buckingham Palace. As you can see, Animal Rising, two activists here, and there's a cameraman there, look, pre-arranged, obviously, just rock up to it and put those stickers over the portrait using rollers. Now, I hasten to add, there is a sheet of glass or perspex over this, so it wasn't damaged. But it surely has to ask the question, how on earth can these people just rock up to what is one of the most treasured portraits in royal history, a favourite of the King's, no security guard, not even a security rope, no security whatsoever. They go up to it and they put this over the top of it. Now, here we are, we're talking about it. Maybe we're part of the problem. We should stop giving them oxygen. But this is yet another desecration of a special piece of art, in this case, one of the King's favourites. And the big question is, how can this be allowed to happen time and time again? Right, Cameron Walker, I think we do have you now, Cameron. I've been through most of the detail there, but tell us, this is an extraordinary act of desecration.
Well, yes, luckily, Martin, the portrait itself was covered in perspex, so the painting itself was not damaged. It's the first official portrait of King Charles III since his coronation. It was unveiled by the King at Buckingham Palace a couple of weeks ago. It now hangs in the Philip Mould Gallery in London. And as you were saying there, two Animal Rising activists entered the gallery and then wallpapered the picture of Wallace's face on top of the King's, and the speech bubble which reads, "No cheese, Gromit. Look at all this cruelty on RSPCA farms." Now, what they were trying to do was highlight a report that Animal Rising had put out, which alleges 280 breaches on so-called RSPCA assured farms when it comes to animal cruelty. Now, the RSPCA has denied that particular report. I'm going to read you a full statement from them very shortly. But just to go back to the wider point here, Buckingham Palace are not clearly going to be commenting on this. They say they're not going to be commenting. I suspect it's because they don't want to give this group the oxygen of publicity, encouraging more acts of vandalism. And of course, I think the King's mind is going to be very much focused, although he does like Wallace and Gromit, we're led to believe, but I think his mind's going to be focused very much on both Trooping the Colour, which is happening on Saturday, as well as Order of Regatta, which is happening on Monday. But an RSPCA spokesperson has said, it's a very lengthy statement, I'm afraid, but I'll try and be quick. He said, "We are shocked by this vandalism of His Majesty the King, our patron's portrait. We welcome scrutiny of our work, but we cannot condone illegal activity of any kind. Our staff and volunteers work extremely hard, rescuing, caring for and speaking up for animals. Animal rising sustained activity is distracting from our focus on the work that really matters, helping thousands of animals every day. We remain confident that the RSPCA Assured scheme is the best way to help farmed animals right now, while campaigning to change their lives in the future. RSPCA higher welfare standards has been independently proven to make lives better for millions of animals each year." And so it goes on.
Okay, thank you, Cameron Walker, for that royal update. Now, moving on, we are moving on to, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. In a few minutes, we'll cross live to Germany, where England are getting ready to kick off for Euro 2024, which, of course, starts this Friday. England kick off, of course, 8 p.m. on Sunday. But first, your latest news headlines, Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just coming up to 32 minutes past 3. The top story this afternoon. Rishi Sunak has said he's not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him. That's as he unveiled the Conservatives' manifesto earlier. His election promises include another 2p cut to national insurance, a ban on phones in schools and a new Help to Buy scheme. Labour, though, have called it an unaffordable recipe for more chaos. But speaking at the launch event, the Prime Minister said he is offering a clear plan of bold action to cut tax.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Well, responding to those pledges from the Prime Minister, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said that the Conservatives' plan doesn't make economic sense, and he said that he wouldn't match the national insurance cut.
Money's not there for the Tories' desperation, and what they're producing is a recipe for 5 more years of chaos. And I think that's why it's so important that we see this election as a choice, because we can't go on like this. We need to turn the page, rebuild, start with Labour. We've got 6 first steps that are ready to go on July the 5th, get on with the job, roll our sleeves up. So that's the choice before the country now.
As we've been hearing, a protest group has vandalised a portrait of the King. 2 members of Animal Rising entered the Philip Mould Gallery and stuck images to the painting from the animated series Wallace and Gromit. The group says it was calling attention to what it says is poor treatment of animals on farms, adding that they targeted His Majesty due to his position as a royal patron of the RSPCA. And stick with us. That's the message to England fans from the squad ahead of Euro 2024. Live pictures here, if you're watching on television, of the squad as they prepare for that tournament, ramping up their preparations today after Gareth Southgate's side landed in Germany last night. Their defeat to Iceland in the final friendly saw them booed off at Wembley, and they face Serbia in the tournament's opener on Sunday. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Your next update with Polly Middlehurst at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to our website, gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And let's take a look at the markets this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.2709 and €1.1851. The price of gold is £1,822.25. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,137 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, simply go to gbnews.com/your-say, and I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again to you. I'm Jules Buckley. County Durham, the A689 still closed both ways, shut between Cows Hill and the Kilhope-led Mining Museum in Nenshead at the scene of a collision. There's a closure too in Merseyside, Newton-le-Willows, Southwark Road, the A572, shut for investigation work between Warren Drive and the A49 Mill Lane. The Lincoln Bypass, the A46, that's shut both ways between the Highcombe roundabout and the Wisby Road roundabout in Keyring. There's a vehicle fire being dealt with, and there's been a spillage of diesel as well, adding to delays. Southbound M1 Northampton to Milton Keynes, junction 15 to 14 still slow going, although all lanes are back open following an earlier bump there. And Ivor Heath in Buckinghamshire, Church Road, the 412 shut by 5 points in queuing for a collision there. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
England's new patron saint, Gary Lineker, a man holier and more virtuous than Mother Teresa and Gandhi combined, strikes again. Never one to miss the chance of some moral posturing, goal-hanging PR opportunist Lineker has spoken out about tonight's Champions League final. He tweeted the following: "This is the first time I'll be cheering for Real Madrid in a Champions League final." The German side Dortmund have signed a 3-year sponsorship deal with weapons manufacturer Rheinmetall. Now, Gary Lineker is not a stupid person. Following a stellar career on the pitch, it was a storied transition to broadcasting. And let me tell you, he's worth every penny of that £1.3 million a year of licence fee payers' cash to introduce football clips. So how did it escape the attention of this bright man that our democracies and our freedoms are protected and defended by the weapons produced like companies such as Rheinmetall? In fact, we should big up, not cancel, Rheinmetall, who have produced some of the armaments which are now helping Ukraine. Well, I'm very confused because I thought Gary Lineker was very supportive of Ukraine and their battle for survival. But now he wants to take their weapons away. I'm very, very confused. After all, they're going to need weapons with which to defend themselves. They can't fight by sending off tweets like Gary does. Now, many people love Gary Lineker. He has over 8 million followers on Twitter. This idol of the progressive left battled HMRC in court to reduce his tax bill by almost £5 million. This latest Lineker rant about war is weapons-grade nonsense. Sorry, Gary, but you're firing blanks.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:38. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, believe it or not, there are just 3 days to go until the start of Euro 2024, and England are the favourites with the bookmakers to win the tournament. Can you, Adam, and leave it? Well, Gareth Southgate's squad is training in Germany for the first time ahead of their opening game, and that, of course, is against Serbia on Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Now, joined in the studio by Sky Sports, by broadcaster, Chris Scudder. Chris, welcome to the show. I think we've got some live pictures. Can we cut to those live pictures of the actual training session? There we are. Scudders, everybody's incredibly excited about this. We had a disaster against Iceland, a slip-up on Friday, but nevertheless, looking ahead, we are now the bookies' favourites.
Foot in Germany, yeah. I mean, this is it. And the squad only arrived yesterday, so we're all second-guessing who's going to be playing at the weekend. But, favourites. Favourites for a reason. Offensively, England, second to none, really. Don't forget, though, that favouritism only comes by how much money is put on at the bookies, and in this country, a lot of people bet. So England are going to be, they always are, shorter than they probably should be. But you know, it's you can see the pictures there just leaping around a little bit while we get in focus. But you know, it's just a question of acclimatisation now. And as the Crystal Palace youngster, who's one of the surprises really in the squad, I think, who you know, we were talking earlier before we came on about whether Gareth Southgate's going to be here for the next tournament, the World Cup. For me, this squad looks like it's been set up to include the next tournament. But he's hinted, he spoke to a German newspaper today, did Gareth, saying that if England don't win the tournament, this will probably be a swan song. So if they were to win it, it would be a no-brainer, really. They'd probably say, stay on, and we want you to see us through to win the big one. The World Cup's one we really want to win. You know, 58 years since the last major tournament.
Don't remind me. There's Gareth Southgate. Look at Southgate's looking very chipper. Declan Rice there chopping the ball around. They're looking very chipper.
Yeah, don't forget, you know, these. I've been to so many of these. You know, the training. It's like a prison camp sometimes. These big tournaments. You go there and they start training. The cameras are allowed to roll for 10 minutes and then you're thrown out, basically. So, in other words, you know, you're not going to give anything away. But you know, listen, it's a fabulous thing. Joe Gomez there. Some of the young Mark Gahey. Some of these are not household names. You know, the big ones we know, Harry Kane and latterly Jude Bellingham, people like that. But you know, this is to me, it's a mix of experience, and there's Bukayo Saka, who got a lot of stick the other night, even though he came off the bench.
He came on 65 minutes, but he got all the stick.
I know, and there was a few people. You can imagine the backdrop to that after what happened in the Euros when the black players missed penalties and they got a lot of criticism. But tournament football, as Jude Bellingham, the golden boy who's been off doing great things with Real Madrid.
All eyes on him.
Yeah, it is. I mean, people must not expect him to carry the team to victory. He's 20. He's 21 at the end of this month, actually, last day of the year. And as a Birmingham City fan myself, very proud to see Jude doing so well. But
for a 20-year-old player, what composure. I mean, the way that his game has improved in the last couple of years is astonishing.
It's incredible. And what Gareth likes about him so much is his mentality. His dad's a policeman, mixed-race family, and that he has been brought up so well. Since he was 16, I saw his debut at Birmingham, at Portsmouth for Birmingham, 4 years ago when he was just turned 16. And I just thought, I'd heard of his reputation before, but you know, I just thought, look at that, he's like a thoroughbred racehorse. And he's got this amazing mentality, so mature. And Gareth loves players like that. And he's filled his squad with players he knows he can control. I mean, I think a lot of people felt, why isn't Jack Grealish in the squad? Because he's a bit of a Jack the lad, you know.
Well, maybe that's why he's not in the squad.
Well, maybe, but I think that's a mistake. So I think when it comes to tournaments, you need experience and players who have been there before. You know, I mentioned Eze, and there's people like Anthony Gordon and Jared Bowen of West Ham, who, you know, he's got a lot of young players. The young lad, Adam Wharton, 20 at Crystal Palace, been nowhere near a tournament. I do think you need, which is why I would have taken Rashford and I would have taken Grealish. But, you know, listen, Gareth's, you know, nailed his colours to the mast.
Yeah.
And,
big question is...
There's Cole Palmer, another one. Look, listen, you know, he played the other night and he was wandering all over the pitch. Fantastic talent. But, you know, we must not hope that, you know, the sort of Galactico, let's cram the team full of...
We need to talk about the fact, rumours in today, stories in today, 500 Serbian hooligans on the way for this match. There's no land border, we can't control that. England, historically, of course, Chris, have been a target. Are you expecting aggro on Sunday night?
No, basically, I mean, up to 2,000 England fans won't be there, so the traditional troublemakers from England have not been around for 20 years now, pretty much at tournaments. Still happens at home, we know that, but for international tournaments, the passports had to be handed in last week, so they won't be there. You always get this. Serbia kind of ally themselves politically with Russia, don't they, to a certain extent. The problems we had in 2016 was caused by Russian hooligans, Sergei Lavrov saying, the foreign minister, oh, it was all the French authorities' fault. Rubbish. It was that they came to cause trouble. Basically, England are the doyens, the gods of hooliganism, that traditionally over the years.
And
so they become a target. And therefore, when those who would fight back, for want of a better way of putting it, are not there, then innocents get targeted.
We can hear the crowd revving them up there. I've got to ask you, Scuds, in a word, we ask it every time, is football coming home?
I think there's a very good chance, but listen, don't bet your house on it. I can see England getting to the semi-final certainly, and then a big semi-final against France, who we owe, and we owe Portugal as well for some penalty shootout defeats. So fingers crossed, but a great chance certainly. Yeah.
Well, the mouth is watering. There's Harry Kane. They're all getting ready. The big build-up in Germany. Chris Scudder, an absolute delight. I hadn't really sunk in this tournament is happening. By Jove, it's real. There are the boys. They're getting revved up, ready to face Serbia.
I think it's the cameraman, though.
Yeah, the cameraman. I think he's had a bit on the jungle juice. He's been on the Jaeger bombs. Hey, thank you very much, Chris Scudder. Superb. Thanks for all your company in the studio. Brilliant. I just want to keep watching this. I just want to keep watching that. Right, moving on, a Labour government will bring in a scheme aimed at teaching kids as young as 3 how to brush their teeth. Is this a good way to ease the UK's dental crisis, or an example of the nanny state going too far? Fangs can only get better. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today, some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east, but the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's Newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it? You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:48. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, at 4 o'clock, I'll have more analysis on the Conservative Manifesto and ask, is there anything in there that might scare the Labour Party? Now, let's get more on Sir Keir Starmer's party. A day after Labour unveiled plans to give free breakfast to all primary school children, the party's been talking about 100,000 extra dental appointments. to help clear a dental backlog. And our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has spent the day with the Labour leader, and she joins me now. Catherine, welcome to the show. So things going to get better for Labour Party in 97. Now FANG's going to get better. They're talking about dentistry and healthcare. Tell us more.
Good afternoon, Martin from Lincoln. Yes, I was up in Teesside this morning with Sir Keir Starmer and the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. They were visiting a school, talking to journalists about their two announcements today that are part of their Child Health Action Plan. Yesterday, they were at a school talking about childcare. Today, talking about dentistry. Specifically, they say they're going to make another 100,000 appointments for children, because Sir Keir Starmer says that the most common reason for a child to go to hospital is actually to have a tooth taken out. Labour say that over 500,000 less children saw a dentist last year than they did as recently as 2018. So they want to change that. Also, they're announcing that if they get into government in 3.5 weeks' time, as does look very likely at the moment, they will ban super high energy drinks with a very high caffeine content. So that's things over 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. So things such as Red Bull, etc., that many teenagers are quite keen on drinking because, of course, it's very bad for your health and also very, very bad for your teeth. They were also watching a supervised toothbrushing session. Now, this is something that was announced by the Labour Party back in January, that if they come to power, they want children from age 3 to 5 to basically do supervised toothbrushing in schools. He was asked whether this wasn't all a bit nanny state. And he basically said he didn't care because children's dentistry, along with dentistry as a whole, is in crisis. And if it means less children losing their teeth before the age of 10, then so be it.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, live from Lincoln on the Labour campaign trail. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined now by the teacher and the great friend of the show, Mr. Bobby Segal. Bobby, it's always a delight to have you on. So, 3 solid policies. You're a teacher, you know about kids in schools. Free breakfast clubs, that was yesterday's. Now, dentistry, we've talked about that before. Teeth brushing lessons. And Red Bull energy drinks being banned for under 16s. As a trio of packages, Bobby, how useful as a teacher and somebody who's aware of child's health, how useful do you think this is?
So again, I've been in schools, I've said to you before, for about a decade now, and we'll go through the 3 policies one by one. So the first one is about the free breakfasts. Of course, these things cost money, but I've seen so many young people come to my schools, come to the first lesson, and they're not fully awake. Maybe they're not slept properly, but actually a lot of them haven't been eaten properly overnight or breakfast. And again, there are separate questions about parents and parental responsibility, but at schools, we need to deal with what we have right now. So I think the free breakfast thing is definitely something that will make an impact. Then we're talking about the dentistry. And again, this is one where I was initially a bit cynical, thinking, teachers, we can't be burdened with every single thing. But as the stats show, for 5 to 9-year-olds, the most common reason for missing school and hospital appointments is poor dental health. Again, we as adults know that when you got a toothache, it sounds like a minor thing, but it really does impair your ability to work. So for young people in particular as well. So I think if we can nip the bud as soon as possible, if that means 3 to 5-year-olds getting that sort of supervised teeth brushing by external experts or teachers being trained how to do it. Yeah, of course, teachers should be teaching numeracy and literacy, but I think it's one of those things where there'll be a long-term benefit. And the final
what about
thing
energy drinks, Bobby?
Oh, gosh. Martin, this is like the bane of any secondary school teacher. Students, they don't have breakfast, but they'll come in with their whatever Monster, these high caffeinated drinks off their faces. It's horrible. They think, sir, I need to get focused. But actually, it means they have a little boost for about 5-10 minutes. And the rest of the morning or afternoon, they have no ability to focus. So I think that one thing, actually, I'm really incredibly behind as a teacher.
OK, Bobby Segal, a lot of people say this is nanny state interference gone mad, but you know about kids in classrooms. I trust your word. Always value your opinion. Bobby Segal, thank you very much. And I hope you saw those pictures there of the European Championship warm-up. I bet you're excited as a West Ham fan. Too bad none of your players are there. Anyway, have a good one. Bobby Segal, always a delight. Now, moving on, Rishi Sunak has unveiled the Tories' election manifesto plan. It includes a promise to halve migration, a pledge to build 1.6 million homes and massive bumper tax cuts. But is it enough to turn this election campaign around? Or is it simply lacking on detail? And astonishingly, Keir Starmer attacked it as Corbynism. You couldn't make it up. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coasts with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Merseyside, Newton Le Willows and the Southworth Road, the A572. That remains shut between the A49 and Warren Drive. A collision from overnight still being investigated. The Lincoln bypass, the A46 between the Highcombe roundabout and the Westby Road roundabout, still closed. A vehicle fire and spillage still being dealt with. Surrounding routes are really struggling. Buckinghamshire and Church Road in Iverheath, the A412, that's shut between 5 Points and the Bangors Road North, and queuing. A 2-vehicle bump there and a fuel spillage still causing delays. And the M25 anti-clockwise was still queuing in patches toward the Leatherhead turn-off at Junction 9. There was a breakdown there earlier. I can see on the cameras all the lanes are back open, but we're still seeing some residual congestion this afternoon. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner, with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It is 4 o'clock and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. Today, Rishi Sunak made housing a major focus of his manifesto giveaway, with major stamp duty cuts, help first-time buyers and a promise of 1.6 million new homes. Is his plan a concrete offering or is it foundationless? And in response to the Prime Minister's bumper giveaway, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer astonishingly branded it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto that will load everything into the wheelbarrow. Well, Sir Keir should know about Corbyn-style giveaways. He backed 2 of them in Corbyn's manifestos in 2017 and 2019. And a man has been arrested after he threw lumps of rubble at Nigel Farage on the campaign trail in Barnsley earlier today. First milkshakes and now rocks. Do we have a serious issue with escalating political violence? Do we need to talk about the radicalised far left? That's all coming up in your next hour. So Rishi has delivered his manifesto, £17 billion in giveaways, national insurance cuts and an abolishment of NI for all who are self-employed, stamp duty cuts, a promise of protecting pensions. And the big question is, where will the money come from? And on from that, will it make a blind bit of difference to how you intend to vote? Is there enough in there to tempt you to vote Conservative? If so, let me know. How are you going to vote? Get in touch, usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But before we get stuck into all of that, it's your headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom today is that Rishi Sunak says he isn't blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him as he launched the Conservative Party's manifesto today. The Prime Minister promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts, including another 2 pence in the pound cut to national insurance. In total, he says, the cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Labour has called that a desperate wish list, but Rishi Sunak says he's the only leader with bold ideas.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Take you live to central London right now, where the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has taken to the podium to answer back to the Conservative Party's manifesto.
Was a desperate wish list of unfunded promises from a weak Prime Minister. We know where these sorts of unfunded promises from Conservative Party Prime Ministers lead. They lead to higher mortgages, leaving you and your family worse off. They've done it before, and their manifesto today is proof that they will do it all over again. This is a recipe for 5 more years of Tory chaos, which will leave British people paying the price. Today I want to address directly the costs of the Conservative Party manifesto. The money is not there, and it will mean £4,800 on your mortgage. This election falls at an important moment for the British economy. 14 years of Conservative governments have brought us to this point. 14 years of political chaos, 14 years of rising taxes and low growth, resulting in the first Parliament on record where living standards are lower at the end of the Parliament than they were at the start. Our national debt at the highest level since the 1960s. And while their rhetoric today is about tax cuts, their record is one of tax rises. 26 increases in tax in this Parliament alone, yielding the highest tax burden in 70 years. The Conservatives are gaslighting you, and no one will believe their claims. I've been clear throughout my time as Shadow Chancellor. I want taxes on working people to be lower. In the last Parliament, I opposed tax rises and I supported cuts in tax, including to national insurance, but only when they are fully funded. Labour's manifesto will include an ironclad commitment. There will be no increases in income tax, national insurance or VAT with a Labour government for the duration of the next Parliament. But we will only cut taxes when the money is there. In contrast, the Tories offer promises they cannot fund from savings that they cannot find. And when it comes to the plans in this Tory manifesto, the money is simply not there, and it will mean £4,800 more on your mortgage. To pretend otherwise is dishonest and it's irresponsible. Over the last 4.5 hours, we have gone through the Conservative manifesto line by line. They claim that their plans are fully costed and fully funded. But analysis that we have conducted since publication has identified £71 billion of unfunded commitments over the course of the next Parliament. The consequence of an increase in day-to-day borrowing to fund the commitments made in this manifesto would amount to a second Tory mortgage bombshell, because higher borrowing at this scale would force the Bank of England to increase interest rates. The result would be an increase in the average mortgage totalling £4,800 over the course of the Parliament. This is serious. I worked as an economist at the Bank of England before entering politics. I know the importance of sound money and having a firm grip on the public finances. If these Conservative policies are followed through, it poses a real threat to our economy and to household incomes. Now, I want to be transparent about how we've reached the figures, because I am determined that the Labour Party will hold ourselves, that I will hold myself to higher standards than the Conservative Party holds. So we have set out clearly in the document we're publishing today the logic and the workings behind all of our findings. In particular, I want to draw attention to 5 serious errors in the Conservative Party's manifesto. Let me take each of them in turn. First, they have spent much of the first 3 weeks of this campaign pushing their national service proposal. But their costings for their plan omit the costs of equipment, accommodation or training of the 30,000 new military recruits. On any reasonable assessment, that plan will cost double their costings, and it would consume the entire revenue that they can reasonably expect to raise from cracking down on tax avoidance. That leaves many of their remaining plans unfunded. Second, the Tories claim that their crackdown on tax avoidance and evasion would raise £6 billion. But the truth is, despite trying to mimic Labour's plans, they have failed to account for the near £900 million of investment needed to meet their pledge. Third, the Tories claim that they can make more than £1 billion of efficiency savings from government agencies. But the truth is, they've provided absolutely no detail whatsoever. This is not a credible plan. Fourth, the Tories claim that they can raise £1 billion from scrapping poor-performing university courses, because they have no plan to cap the number of student places that falls apart if students simply choose to study a different course. And fifth, the Tories claim that they can make £12 billion in savings in welfare. But the truth is, that claim is simply not credible. It is true that under the Conservatives, the welfare bill has spiralled. Since 2019, spending on benefits to support disabled people and those with health conditions has risen in real terms by £20 billion. And under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction. Reform of the work capability assessment, reform of fit notes, increased sanctions for people out of work for more than a year, and increased funding for mental health, all included in the baseline from the Office for Budget Responsibility. Each of the other three proposals are no more than vague ambitions, with no detail of how they could produce the savings that they're aiming for. Of 7 separate pledges on welfare that they made today, in every case, the money has either already been banked by the OBR or they have no credible plans on how to make the savings. Their much heralded one single penny of new money relative to the OBR forecast. We've been here before. It was less than 2 years ago that the Conservatives set out tens of billion pounds of unfunded commitments. They crushed the economy, sent mortgage rates spiralling and put pensions in peril. In the end, you got the mortgage increase, but you didn't get the tax cut. And that is exactly what you'll get all over again. Don't judge 14 years on 49 days, says Rishi Sunak. And they should be judged on the whole of their 14-year record. But the damage done in those 49 days will last for years. Last year, 6.4 million people across England and Wales saw their rent increase or had to remortgage. A further 1.5 million households have either remortgaged this year or will do so in the second half of this year, paying on average an additional mortgage payments every single month. And this manifesto is final confirmation, if any were needed, that they have not learned their lesson. This is about Tory future, not just about Tory past. A recipe for 5 more years of chaos. Cast your mind back to a little over 18 months ago. Rishi Sunak was supposed to be the antidote to Liz Truss. He was supposed to steady the ship. You have to ask, what happened to that Rishi Sunak? Instead of drawing a line under the chaos, he's determined to write the next chapter of it. More undeliverable promises from an ungovernable party. Just 2 weeks ago, Rishi Sunak's Chancellor said that a third cut to national insurance wouldn't move the dial. And now that we find, in a last-minute desperate scramble, that is exactly what they're proposing, but with no plan to pay for it. And here's the thing. If they did believe that their sums added up, if they thought that they would get the all-clear from the Office for Budget Responsibility, they wouldn't have put these plans in a manifesto. They would have put them in a budget. They know their numbers don't add up, and the Conservatives' desperation will put our economy at risk. The money is not there, and it will mean £4,800 on your mortgage. You will see something very different when we publish our manifesto on Thursday. A fully costed, fully funded, credible plan. I will not raise taxes on working people. And I will not raise income tax, national insurance or VAT with the Labour government for the duration of the next Parliament. In fact, I want taxes to be lower. But I will not play fast and loose with the public finances. The change that we offer will be built, can only be built, on the basis of iron discipline. I know that economic stability is the foundation for economic success. We will not enter an arms race on unfunded election promises. We have started as we mean to go on. Every policy we announce, every line in our manifesto will be fully costed and fully funded. And that is the attitude that I will take into the Treasury. A Labour government will not waver from...
OK, that was Rachel Reeves there giving her response to Rishi Sunak's party manifesto, which was launched this morning at Silverstone. Let's get some reaction now back in our studio. Our political correspondent Olivia Utley is with me, and so is the political commentator and property expert Russell Quirk, who was jabbing in there with his comments in real time. Let's start with you, Olivia. It's fair to say the gloves are well and truly off. Rachel Reeves there saying Rishi Sunak's manifesto was a desperate wish list, unfunded promises, a recipe for disaster. She went on to say that they've costed up everything in Rishi's manifesto. The true figure, she claims, is £71 billion of increased borrowing, which then she said, because she worked at the Bank of England, the Bank of England would have to raise their interest rates, and that would lead to you, the voter, having £4,800 extra on your mortgage. She's torn the heart out of Rishi's numbers. The gloves are off.
Well, it was a pretty extraordinary speech to hear from a Labour shadow chancellor. This is the sort of attack lines that you expect to hear coming from Conservatives after a Labour manifesto or budget. It was all about how the money's not there, your taxes will rise, it's irresponsible, etc. It feels as though Labour is very much trying to pitch itself as the party of sound money. As for the content of what she said, I mean, she made some very interesting and probably quite accurate points there about some of Rishi Sunak's commitments. He has said, for example, that he will cut spending for universities by outlawing Mickey Mouse degrees. Well, as Rachel Reeves points out, the Tory figures don't seem to take into account that lots of people doing those so-called Mickey Mouse degrees will not go to university. They'll simply do a different degree instead. The very specific calculation of how much this is going to cost the average person in their mortgage is pretty disingenuous. I mean, she said it's going to cost exactly £4,800. That's a very strangely specific number. The thinking behind that is that if you do sort of a huge giveaway, there'll be a kind of run on the pound, as there was in the 2022 mini budget, and you end up in a situation where the Bank of England has to raise interest rates again. Of course, it's impossible to say the Bank of England is independent, exactly how much interest rates would be raised by, and of course you can't say exactly how much it's going to cost the average person. But that's, if you like, a bit of a Brexit side of the bus tactic. You say a big, impressive, very specific sounding figure, and the Tories will have to spend the rest of the week explaining why it's not £4,800. But people will be thinking, well, how much is it then? And that's the sort of questions that Rachel Reeves wants people to be asking. I mean, it's so far from the Corbynism of days of old. This is an extremely, from what she's saying, it sounds as though the Labour manifesto is going to be extremely sort of cautious, softly, if you like, quite small c conservative. It'll be fascinating to see what Labour members think of this, because, of course, Labour needs to get all the centre votes that it can. It needs to be taking voters away from the Conservatives. But to do that, it does need people pounding the streets in the next few weeks. And those will be Labour members who, on the whole, are quite a lot further to the left than Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. But yeah, a pretty extraordinary reaction in terms of the politics of it. This very much sounded like a Conservative shadow chancellor.
It did. And Russell Quirk, we got you in to talk about property. Of course, your portfolio of knowledge much bigger than that. In particular, you were scoffing and wanting to get involved about the specific link that Rachel Reeves made there between increased borrowing and the Bank of England and your mortgage rates. They're obviously trying to put the frighteners on. The Tories tried it first, £2,094 per household, extra tax. The Labour Party have just doubled down. Now it's £4,800 on your mortgage.
They're all throwing these wild and fabulous numbers around, aren't they, just to scare the electorate. It's all becoming very confusing. Not to mention, as Olivia says, rather disingenuous, I think. These numbers are literally just being pulled out of hats.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't think we can take too many lessons on the economy from Labour, can we? I'm old enough to remember the last Labour government, and unfortunately the one before that, when we had rubbish piled on the streets, inflation that made Zimbabwe look cheap, and let's not forget that note from Liam Burns, shall we? There's no money left. So Rachel Reeves may well have worked at the Bank of England. I don't know what she did there, if she's in a particularly senior role. But believe me, just because she worked at the Bank of England doesn't mean that she's going to single-handedly carry the economy to prosperity. The link between borrowing more, which which frankly Labour are going to have to do, particularly if they're going to fund all these fantastical things around net zero and the Great British Energy Company. You know, these things in terms of the increase in borrowing, it's inevitable, I think, that we're going to have to increase borrowing no matter which government gets in power. But the relationship between borrowing and consumer interest rates just simply isn't a series of dots that you can join. So I'm not sure that Rachel Reeves knows her economics very well.
But she made that claim there, and these claims, as Olivia said, these big numbers, they stick. You throw them at the wall. Everyone talked about Labour Party tax rises after that first TV debate. Now they've thrown this one out there, £4,800 on your mortgage. That will be scary to people. But the fact of the matter is it based on extrapolation? Is it based on reality?
It's not based on reality at all. And unfortunately, look, these politicians, whether it be Lib Dem, Labour or Conservative, let's just do this for balance, shall we, as we've got rules to adhere to. I think they're all in danger of disengaging the public even more with these wild claims and these silly things that they're throwing out to scare and indeed to try and attract
Now,
people.
Russell, I just have to interject because we've got some breaking news and we've just heard that the jury has reached a verdict in Hunter Biden's trial in Wilmington in Delaware. President Joe Biden's only surviving son faces 3 charges tied to the possession of a gun while using narcotics, and he has pleaded not guilty. He's pleaded not guilty. There he is. So he's come out. He said not guilty. For those of you just catching in, Hunter Biden, who of course is Joe Biden's only surviving son. The jury's reached a verdict in the gun possession trial, and it's not guilty. Not guilty is the verdict. We'll have more on that story after the break. Let's get back to the studio now and have a quick chat on the... Are we still going to Russell Quirk, or are we moving on? Let's go, Russell, back to you. I got you to talk about housing. Let's quickly nibble at that, can we? A promise of a 1.6 million extra homes. Everyone's promising more homes. Where are they going to build them? Abolishing the stamp duty entirely on houses up to £450,000. A new Help to Buy scheme. Will any of this help? Because without supply, all this will do surely is increase demand.
Well, Martin, I'm afraid the question really is any of this new? And I'm afraid most of it isn't. So first-time buyers right now don't pay stamp duty up to £425,000. That was something that was introduced in 2022, albeit as a temporary measure till 2025. All Rishi Sunak is doing is stating that that now will become permanent, so it's not new. And in fact, if you bought a house today as a first-time buyer, as long as you complete by March 2025, you won't pay that stamp duty. Help to Buy, yes, that's now finishing. All that's being done here by Rishi Sunak is reheating that. And frankly, when it comes to house build numbers, so you know those numbers that we need to see in Britain, which the experts say is about 300,000 new homes every year. All that the parties now are doing is playing frankly top trumps with the numbers. We haven't built more than 220,000 homes per year for decades since the Macmillan government. Both Labour and the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, of course, all saying that they're going to build these huge numbers of homes, 1.5, 1.6. No doubt the Green Party will come out with 1.7. Reform will come out with 1.8. You know, let's see who can hit 2 million first. It's a prophecy, but unfortunately, Martin, it's a pipe dream. None of them have done it over decades. None of them are going to do it.
And, of course, with 750,000 net migration to the country, we're going to need a lot more houses. Anyway, Russell Quirk, thank you very much. Olivia Lee, also superb. Thank you very much for joining me here in the studio in Westminster. I've got lots more coming up on that Tory manifesto throughout the show in the next few minutes. I'll talk to a government minister and a member of the shadow cabinet. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Was that the verdict?
It was, yeah.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mervyn Kirsch was a boy when the war began. By D-Day, he was trained and ready to fight after years waiting.
It was taking a long time. I suppose I was an agitator.
He remembers reality unfolding to the sound of thumping guns.
In the morning, about 5 o'clock, they woke me up to say we were going towards France now, and I could see the outline in the dawn, and I could hear couldn't see, but I could hear the shells, big shells going overhead both ways. Nobody was bothering to fire at me, which was quite good. Then I began to feel nervous, and I realised it's not just an adventure, it's actual world war.
Mervyn served in the Ordnance Regiment. His job was to get supplies like ammunition and vehicles onto the beach. When an advance party, including some of his friends, were destroyed, Mervyn stepped up.
The head of me went a reconnaissance unit. We were supposed to go on D+6. The reconnaissance unit was going D+2 to find a suitable site for 200 drivers and 1,000 vehicles, which we were going to stock, all kinds. They went across, but they didn't get across. They were torpedoed, the only boat torpedoed that day. I was put on a boat that night, any boat, going across, and told to find a suitable site for vehicles and men. So I just crossed over and I landed, got to the top of the cliff and just, with a strange driver in a track vehicle, told him just to drive down one of the roads and see what we can find.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
News, huge story. The jury has found a verdict in Hunter Biden's gun trial. Hunter Biden is guilty on all 3 counts related to illegal gun possession. Hunter Biden, of course, Joe Biden's only surviving son. That's just been announced there in Wilmington, Delaware. Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 counts related to illegal gun possession after a 3 hours of deliberation, a week-long trial in the Biden family's hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. It featured some agonizing testimony about his addiction to crack cocaine, much of which came from close relatives. And now the verdict has been delivered. Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 charges relating to illegal gun possession. An astonishing breaking story. We'll have more of that later in the show. Back to domestic politics now, and let's get more reaction to the Conservatives' manifesto, which has come out today. And I'm joined now by Darren Jones, who's the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Welcome to the show, Darren. We just heard an extraordinary speech there from Rachel Reeves, calling Rishi Sunak's manifesto a desperate wish list. 26 increases in taxes, £71 billion of increased borrowing, she claimed, will lead to £4,800 on every single person's mortgage. Is that figure true, or is that yet more lies, damn lies and statistics?
Well, good afternoon. I mean, it's true on the basis of the Conservative Party manifesto that was published today. The Conservatives had the chance to set out how they were going to fund their policies in their manifesto today, and they haven't even tried, to be frank. I mean, that's why we've said it's the most expensive panic attack in political history, because there are tens and tens of billions of pounds of unfunded spending commitments. They've not said how they're going to pay for that with any confidence whatsoever, and so we can only assume they will pay for it through additional borrowing, and that has implications on interest rates and mortgages, as we all found out after Liz Truss, and we calculate that to be on average an additional £4,800 on mortgage rates for people that have mortgages on their homes.
I think it's an astonishing comment earlier on. Sir Keir Starmer said that Rishi Sunak's plan is like Jeremy Corbyn, a Jeremy Corbyn giveaway. Well, Sir Keir Starmer backed those manifesto giveaways from Jeremy Corbyn twice, in 2017 and 2019. I think it's a bit rich for Sir Keir Starmer to be yielding Corbynism as some kind of ghoulish weapon when he backed Corbyn twice.
Well, all that Keir has been pointing out is that the Conservative Party manifesto is pretty big today and has lots of spending commitments in it, and they've not set out with any sense of realism whatsoever how they're going to pay for them. And the last time that happened in British politics was, I'm afraid to say, Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto. But he's not a member of the Labour Party anymore. He's not standing as a Labour MP, and the Labour Party has changed under Keir Starmer. And you will see from our manifesto later this week that all of our policies are fully funded and fully costed.
And it was saying here there are 5 serious errors in there. Picking through the detail, it really feels now, Darren Jones, the gloves are truly off. The two parties are at war over tax and the economy.
Well, look, we're just pointing out the failings of the Conservative Party. Most voters across the country know that because they've already paid the price after Liz Truss tried to do this, and now Rishi Sunak is trying to do it again. They should have learnt the lessons, and they haven't. And that's why in this election campaign we're pointing out that on average £4,800 additional bills on your mortgage payments as a consequence of what Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives are proposing is something that we don't think people should vote for.
OK, thank you very much for joining us for a quick blast there. Darren Jones, who's the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Thanks for joining us. And let's quickly rejoin Mark Spencer, the Minister of State for Food, Farming and Fisheries. Mr Spencer, welcome to the show. So Rachel Reeves, we just heard there, absolutely come out swinging, tearing into Rishi Sunak's manifesto launched earlier, saying it's a desperate wish list of unfulfilled, unfunded promises, a recipe for disaster. And she's pulled this figure out of the air, £4,800 on every single person's mortgage because of the extra borrowing that this would cause. £71 billion of increased borrowing. What's your reaction to that, Mr Spencer?
Well, I think, that is a bit rich coming from them when we've clearly seen that their unfunded promises they make are going to cost everybody £2,000 a year. Ours are fully costed. That's what you would expect from the Conservative Party. That's what you get with the Conservative Party. You do get that sound economic management and vision. That's why we started to see a change in the direction that we're seeing now in the economy following the global pandemic and Putin's invasion of Ukraine. We're now just starting to turn the corner, get inflation under control, start to grow faster than Japan, Germany, the US, France, Italy. And I think now is not the moment to put all of that risk. Now we're just starting to see that increase in our economic growth. Let's not put that at risk by going back to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves.
I think it was extraordinary today that Sir Keir Starmer was accusing Rishi Sunak of a Jeremy Corbyn-style giveaway. Have we gone through the looking glass? Keir Starmer backed Corbyn twice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what you get with the current Labour Party. They will tell you what you want to hear. They will tell you anything that they think will secure your votes until you actually try and pin them down on the detail. And then all of a sudden, they go quite quiet and there is no detail behind it. There isn't a plan. They don't seem to want to talk about the future. They want to talk about the past. So when you ask them a question, what would you do about this? The answer you get is, well, we're in a terrible place at the moment and we wouldn't have done what the government has done, is the answer you get. You don't actually get a vision or a plan as to what their solution is. And I think that is the marked difference at this election. You can either choose Rishi Sunak, who does have a plan, who will tell you what you need to hear, or Keir Starmer with no plan, who will tell you what you want to hear in terms so that he can get your vote.
OK, thanks for joining us. Mark Spencer, the Minister of State for Food, Farming and Fisheries. The war on tax is well and truly underway. The Conservative Party saying it will cost you £2,000 more under Labour. Now Labour saying it will cost you £4,800 more under the Conservatives. What to believe? We'll keep picking over this, of course, throughout the show. And, of course, more on that Hunter Biden guilty verdict just been reached. An astonishing story. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Slow traffic in Glasgow on the M8 eastbound. It's all due to the roadworks between junction 20 West Street and 16 for Craighall. Slow traffic in Manchester. Firstly, M60 clockwise slow between junction 10, the Trafford Centre, and 12, the Eccles interchange. We're also seeing a slowdown on the M67 westbound at Denton Island. We're seeing a slowdown in traffic on the M4 in South Wales near Newport up to the Brynglas tunnels. Estimated travel time there around 40 minutes. Slow in Hampshire for the M27 eastbound, there's a lane closed for a broken down vehicle between junction 5 Southampton Airport and 7 for Hedge End. And we're seeing slow traffic in Surrey on the M25 and the A3 in the roadworks up to the Wisley interchange, and slow in Kent for the M2 exit Slip Road coastbound at junction 3, the Tannington roundabout.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
How can we have Britain's Got Talent? A British girl did win.
Yes.
This weekend.
Christmas, her name is.
Yes, Sydney Christmas.
Sydney Christmas.
She's a singer.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she's going to have a Christmas single out.
She's a cruise ship singer, and she works in a gym.
First woman to win in 9 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't watch it anymore.
But some people clearly do. But apparently 5 of the last in the final were not British-born or even live here.
Outrageous.
I know. So why call it Britain's Got Talent?
I know.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
It sums up as well this difference between the British public and most people on the telly.
Yeah.
Because the judges do not notice this lack of British involvement or at least if they do notice it, they're not saying anything about it. But the viewers notice the imbalance, and just 4 of the foreign acts made it through to the final in the end. There was a patriotic protest in London on Saturdays, it was described. There was hundreds of thousands of people there. There were Students Against Tyranny were there. There was Tommy Robinson was there, much maligned, divisive figure. But these people would say, we are feeling the need to walk on the streets of this country because we no longer feel we can assert our British identity.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between patriotism and xenophobia. And I think patriotism is great, and people like to feel a sense of identity, they feel a sense of belonging, you know, they understand what their flag is for, and they kind of, British values, which we all adhere to. And then there's xenophobia, which is sort of, we hate anyone who's not British. So I think I think that march that we saw at the weekend was actually quite patriotic. I don't think it was xenophobic at all. I think it was a nice sort of... They all seemed very kind of peaceful.
There were
and there wasn't any horrible rhetoric or anything like that. Certainly much less horrible rhetoric than we're used to seeing from the pro-Palestinian marches.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:36. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. And now to a frightening incident on the campaign trail today. And a man has thrown missiles at Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. The incidents happened in Barnsley, where Mr Farage was campaigning ahead of the general election. A man ran away before police officers tackled him to the ground. There's footage on your screens now. You can see that man there picking up lumps of rock, it looks like, from a building site bin, chucking them at Nigel Farage's Reform Party battle bus. He's running away there, then you can see, and the police apprehend him further down the road. And this comes after a woman was charged with assault by beating and criminal damage when a milkshake was thrown over Mr Farage in Clacton-on-Sea last week. And let's speak now to our Homeland Security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So, 2019, Mr Farage was milkshaked in Newcastle, milkshaked again last week. Now, the ante has been upped. Projectiles have been thrown. Mark, we seem to have an escalating problem with political violence. Tell us more about this incident.
Yeah, there's some real concern about the potential for this escalating even further in the weeks leading up to the general election, because politicians are at their most vulnerable. They are out and about in constituencies right across the country, determined to try to meet members of the public, of the electorate, to try to get the message across, as Nigel Farage was doing today on top of that battle bus in Barnsley town centre, when someone just by the side of the road where there was a construction site threw a number of objects at the bus and towards Nigel Farage. He ducked and managed to avoid those objects. Now, it's clear that one of the objects was a cup, don't know what it was containing. There was some wet concrete apparently thrown, but Nigel Farage also believes that there may have been a stone or harder rock that was thrown towards the bus as well. That is now being investigated by South Yorkshire Police, who detained a 28-year-old man on suspicion of a public order offence. He is now in police custody and being questioned. After this incident unfolded, just a few minutes later, Nigel Farage, from the safety of the lower deck, laughed it off, but it was clear that he was very frustrated about what is becoming now a regular occurrence of him being targeted out and about on the campaign trail.
I tell you what I'm worried about.
Let me just make sure it's the right one.
If you think about this, a week after we commemorate D-Day, which was done so that we could live in a democracy, where we can agree to disagree, we can be very passionate, but agree to disagree. What we've now got is a mob that want to close down all debate. A mob that are prepared to use violence to achieve their goals. And that, for a democratic country, is very, very worrying indeed.
Be okay?
Me? I'm used to it. I don't like it. Of course not. Because this is stopping me doing what I want to do. You know, I'm at my best going out, meeting people and talking to them, having debate with them. You know, going around the pubs or whatever I do. And these violent youngsters are stopping me. It's very, very frustrating.
It didn't hit you this time?
Didn't hit me this time, but yeah, I mean, you do wonder to what lengths these people will go.
And that is, I think, one of the real concerns that Nigel Farage and other politicians have about the potential for this to escalate into more serious violence. We've seen in both Germany and Slovakia in recent weeks politicians targeted and being seriously injured in those countries. So some real concern. In fact, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has issued a brief statement this afternoon about this incident, in which he says there must be no place for violence and intimidation in our politics, and these actions should be condemned by everyone. He goes on then to thank South Yorkshire Police for their prompt response in arresting the suspect. And I think the fact that the Home Secretary has felt it necessary to comment really indicates just how concerned politicians are about the potential during this election campaign for there to be incidents where politicians are being targeted, not by those who disagree just with the stance that a particular politician has on an issue. We've always had a proud history of political disagreement, but those who are willing to cross over from verbal disagreements into what is political violence.
Mark White, do you think something more sinister is happening here? We seem to have a media class, prevents the counter-terror organisations seem obsessed with the far right, but certainly since October the 7th, Mark, it seems to be more of a radicalised left-wing movement, certainly since the Palestine protests took to the streets in Britain. We've seen an arson attack on Mike Freer's office. He stepped down from politics, Conservative MP. Of course, David Amos was murdered in October 2021. We saw Parliament just around the corner from here surrounded, and that impacted an actual vote going on side. We're seeing constituency officers of parliamentarians from the Labour Party surrounded by those from the hard left, the pro-Palestinian support. Is this something you think we need to talk about? We need to have an open conversation, because if it's getting too dangerous for politicians to campaign during a live electoral cycle, Mark White, that is not a healthy democracy.
No, and we've always had issues with the left, or indeed the far left. I remember covering many May Day protests when You know, that was activists and far-left groups that were involved in some really serious violence against the police and against businesses that they saw as offending their particular sensibilities. So, yes, there's always been issues from those on the left and those on the right. But I think it's less about that and more about those who can't just anymore, it seems, accept that you can disagree with an individual. You can argue your points with an individual and then agree to disagree and leave it just at the political rhetoric. There is now a movement on both sides, it has to be said, where people want to really just enact that disagreement out in much more physical terms. And that can, as we've seen in Germany and as we've seen in Slovakia, result in really significant and serious incidents. And of course, in this country, you mentioned, of course, David Amos, but we remember Joe Cox as well. So there is just a real concern that from whatever side of the political spectrum this may come from, that as we get into an increasingly heated political campaign, that there may be those individuals who are willing to cross this line.
Great words spoken there, Mark White. We can disagree, but we should not take it to the level of physical confrontation that has no place on British streets. Mark White, thank you very much for your expert insight as ever. Now, coming up, we'll get more reaction to the US President's son, Hunter Biden, who's been found guilty on 3 counts, including lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. That's just broken there in Delaware, the hometown of Hunter Biden. We'll have more on that soon. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 4:47. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has recently been convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. A jury in Wilmington, Delaware federal court found him guilty on all 3 counts against him, making Hunter Biden the first child of a sitting US president to be convicted of a crime. A verdict Democrats may seize upon to counter Donald Trump's claim of a justice system weaponized against him. Well, join me now to discuss this is the spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer, welcome to the studio on a hugely controversial day. For the benefit of a British audience who may not be aware of this case, we've got a general election going on after all. Can you bring us up to speed about the charges behind this, the story and the verdict?
Sure. And in America at the moment, there's a lot of lawfare going on. So even those of us who are sitting in America paying attention to this can't follow all of it. So basically, the laptop from hell that had been suppressed before the 2020 election, once that turned out to be real, which we now know, a lot of things came from that. And also, one of the things that happened in this case, in his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, where the Bidens are from, this case was about lying on a gun form, saying that he was not addicted to drugs. Right? Yeah. And there was a lot of testimony and there was a lot of evidence showing that that was not true. He was still very much using crack cocaine and other drugs during that time. So he was convicted on all charges. We'll find out later in the summer what the sentencing is. He could go to prison. I doubt very much that he will. This is his hometown. They love the Bidens. I really hope that the Republicans don't turn this into some kind of lawfare. And as a matter of fact, there was talk that President Trump, were he to win, would come in and pardon Hunter Biden, because he's now a convicted felon. So he would pardon him. President Trump has a brother that was an alcoholic, so he understands. So do most of Americans. You know, they have addiction in their families. So, yeah. And the other thing that I think is interesting is if I were to be a cynical person, I would say this is the one charge that Hunter Biden is looking at that does not tie the crime to President Biden, right? There were some tax charges that he's actually going to face trial in California, I believe, next week, as well as some foreign agent around briberies from, Ukraine and China. So those could link to President Biden. This does not. So it is again, if I was going to be cynical, it is a good way for people to say, hey, this is a fair justice system. We go after Democrats as well.
And Hunter Biden is a man not without his issues, his addictions, been very public about that. In fact, some of the evidence, Jennifer, was agonising in its brutality of his crack addiction. He was waking up in the morning. Did he get his sister onto drugs as well?
Well, what it was his deceased brother's ex-wife, who he started dating after Beau Biden, his brother, died. Yeah. And she, got addicted to crack cocaine. So, there were some really sad stories coming out of that. So, I wouldn't wish addiction on anyone. Certainly this is playing out in front of the whole world. The irony, actually, is I believe President Biden is due to speak at an event today about this exact law. President Biden has been very sort of pro more gun laws, and this law saying that a former addict cannot own a gun is exactly what his son was just convicted of. So,
and moving on from the Hunter Biden case, we initially got you in earlier to talk about Joe Biden himself. You mentioned he's about to do a speech, and yesterday at a Juneteenth celebration at the White House, Joe Biden seemed to totally freeze mid-sentence. He seemed to go into kind of, here he is, you can see on screen there that this is a celebration from yesterday. he completely physically freezes. He doesn't seem to know where he is. A lot of people saying, Jennifer, is this guy okay?
Look, Martin, I mean, first of all, you look at that, and it's very sad. You know, that is clearly somebody in the stages of, well, I'm not a doctor, dementia or other cognitive decline. It actually looks photoshopped, that picture, doesn't it? I know it's not, but he's totally still, while everybody else, including, you know, George Floyd's brother, and then some man dancing in a sequin dress, and Kamala Harris tried to get her husband to dance, and he's frozen, as you say. This is sad, and I think if the Democrats were honest, they would say we need another candidate. This is elder abuse, but the Trump derangement syndrome is so strong, and they do not want President Trump to get elected again, and it's looking like he will. He's ahead in the swing states, and he wins on the issues.
You know, it's funny, Jennifer, I spoke with one Joe Biden's former chief of staff last week, and I specifically said to her, look, a lot of people are saying Joe Biden doesn't seem quite right. You know, you speak to him regularly. How is he? And she said, oh, no, he's as sharp as he was 20 years ago. So the official line, at least, they're putting out is that he's compos mentis. There's no problem at all. This is scurrilous rumours. But there seems to be a mounting body of physical evidence we can see where something looks a bit amiss.
No, completely, and I agree with you. Everything we're hearing out of Washington, for people who are probably far more plugged in than I am, is he's going to be the candidate. That's it. We'll see you at the debates on June 27th. One thing to note about these debates is it was Joe Biden and his team's decision to move them from September up closer to June, right? And they're also doing it without the election committee for the first time ever. My personal view, and it's contrarian, is that this is going to be a test case for can Joe Biden actually do a debate. I doubt very much he can. We've seen the energy differences between him and President Trump, at which point they've got three options.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer Ewing, Republicans Overseas, for joining us. That's all for this hour, but still more loads to come with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. First, your weather, and here's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M8 in Glasgow in both directions in the roadworks approaching the Woodside Viaduct. That's between Junction 20 West Street and 16 Craig Hall. Slow for the M60 clockwise in Manchester between Junction 10 the Trafford Centre and 12 the Eccles interchange. Slow traffic on the M1 southbound in Derbyshire. It's all due to an earlier accident just before Junction 28 Alfreton. Slow in South Wales for the M4 westbound towards the Bryn Glass tunnels. Estimated travel time there around 45 minutes. Queue in traffic for the M1 northbound in Bedfordshire. There's a lane blocked for a broken down car between Junction 11 Dunstable South and 11A Fort Dunstable. And we're seeing queue in traffic in Surrey on the M25 anti-clockwise in the roadworks between Junction 8 Reigate and 6 for Godstone. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done. Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. £17 billion in tax giveaways, a promise to halve migration, a pledge to build 1.6 million new homes and help first-time buyers. Rishi Sunak launches Manifesto at Silverstone racetrack today. Will it rev up the voters or will the wheels come off the Tories' election campaign? And in response to the Prime Minister's bumper giveaway, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer extraordinarily branded it a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto that will load everything into the wheelbarrow. Well, Sir Keir should know he backed 2 of Corbyn's manifestos in 2017 and 2019. And a man has been arrested after he threw lumps of rubble at Nigel Farage on the campaign trail early today in Barnsley. First milkshakes and now rocks. Do we have a serious issue with escalating political violence from the radicalised left? And activists from Animal Rising have caused a major upset by vandalising the King's new portraits to highlight what they consider animal cruelty at RESPCA-approved farms. More of an unholy row, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, it's been an extraordinary day in politics. Sir Keir Starmer has compared Rishi Sunak to Jeremy Corbyn. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, a moment ago compared Rishi Sunak to Liz Truss. I think it's time to make your minds up. Who is he? Truss or Corbyn? And isn't it a bit rich for Sir Keir Starmer to compare anybody to Jeremy Corbyn when he backed Jeremy Corbyn twice at the electoral polls. Also, in the last half an hour, Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 counts relating to illegal possession of a firearm. We'll have all of that and much more. Get in touch usual ways, and it's gbnews.com/your say. But before all of that, it's your headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Well, Rishi Sunak says he's not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him, he said, as he launched the Conservative Party Manifesto today. The Prime Minister promised a multi-billion-pound package of tax cuts, including another 2 pence in the pound cut to national insurance. In total, the cuts would amount to an annual cost of more than £17 billion by 2030. Labour is calling that a desperate wish list. But Rishi Sunak says he's the only leader with bold ideas.
We will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Well, responding to the Conservative manifesto, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said a short time ago that the Conservative plans will lead to a second Tory mortgage bombshell. Here's what she said.
Tories claim that they can make £12 billion in savings in welfare. But the truth is, that claim is simply not credible. It is true that under the Conservatives, the welfare bill has spiralled. Since 2019, spending on benefits to support disabled people and those with health conditions has risen in real terms by £20 billion. And under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction.
Rachel Reeves speaking a short time ago. Well, the Conservative manifesto also includes help for first-time buyers, with changes to stamp duty and what's been called a new and improved Help to Buy scheme. There was a pledge to address a shortage of housing by building 1.6 million new homes. There's also £8.3 billion to fix potholes and resurface roads. There'd also be a total ban on smartphones in schools, and on immigration there's a promise to get flights off the ground to Rwanda every month. Rishi Sunak says the deterrent would be a key part of Britain's migration plan, clearing the asylum backlog within 6 months and ending the use of hotels.
That is why if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security.
Well, TV chef Jamie Oliver says a ban on the sale of energy drinks to young people would be a welcome relief for parents and teachers. The TV chef says he supports Labour's plan, which would see children under the age of 16 blocked from buying drinks with more than 150 milligrams of caffeine per litre. Studies show that high levels of caffeine among young people can cause sleep disturbances as well as behavioural and mental health problems. Well, the Home Secretary James Cleverly has condemned the attack on Nigel Farage after objects were thrown at him during a campaign event this morning. Police have arrested a 28-year-old man on suspicion of public order offences. It's understood a coffee cup and possibly building rubble narrowly missed the Reform UK leader, who was on top of his party's battle bus in Barnsley town centre in Yorkshire. Mr Farage was addressing supporters when he was interrupted by a crowd of demonstrators. He said he'd been warned by police not to get off the bus. Convicted sex offender and former pop star Gary Glitter has been ordered to pay more than £500,000 in damages to one of the women he abused. The woman, who can't be named, is suing the disgraced star, whose real name is Paul Gadd, following his conviction in 2015 for abusing her and 2 other young people between 1975 and 1980. He was briefly released in February last year before being sent back to prison after attempting to access images of children on the dark web. Now, the Hamas terror group has now accepted a ceasefire proposal that was passed by the UN last night. The Security Council backed the three-phase plan, which includes the release of hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. A senior member of Hamas says the group will accept the deal and is now ready to begin negotiations over the details. And as you've been hearing throughout the afternoon on GB News, President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been convicted in the United States of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. A jury has found the 54-year-old guilty on all 3 counts against him. It makes him the first child of the sitting president to be convicted of a crime for the first time. He was accused of not disclosing his crack cocaine addiction when completing forms to buy a gun in 2018. Charges at the time he denied. Now, they say elephants never forget, but now researchers have found they have a particular skill for remembering names. New studies suggest the giant animals use individual rumble sounds to get each other's attention, similar to the way humans use names. Evidence shows them recognising and reacting to certain calls addressed to certain individual elephants and even ignoring calls addressed to others. Experts used a specialist signal processing technique to identify the subtle differences in each call. That's the latest. Sign up for GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now we start with Rishi Sunak and the Tories' attempt to turn the tide of this general election campaign. Their manifesto includes some eye-catching policies, including a promise to halve migration, but it stops short of saying that the UK could leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And I'm joined by our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, and also by the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Peter, Olivia, welcome to the show. Olivia, let's start with you. So Chris Hope asked the first question at the manifesto launch today, GB News' political editor, and he said, if you want to be bold, Prime Minister, why not simply leave the ECHR?
Well, exactly. And the Tories have come actually quite close in their manifesto to saying that they would be prepared to leave the ECHR. They've said that UK sovereignty will always trump European law, but it doesn't actually say that they will just pull out. And lots of Eurosceptics on the Conservative backbenches say that the time has already come to pull out of the ECHR. Basically, what Rishi Sunak's done here is a bit of a fudge. Let's have a listen to what he has to say.
I've been clear throughout that I believe that our plan is compliant with all our international obligations. But I've also been clear, and the manifesto is crystal clear, that if we are forced to choose between the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, and our country's national security, then I'm going to choose our country's national security every single time.
So he says there that he will always choose the country's national security over the European Court of Human Rights. But, you know, there are Conservative MPs who argue that already the country's national security has been threatened because of the ECHR. The Rwanda scheme hasn't been able to get off the ground yet. Months ago, Rishi Sunak said that he wanted to see flights leave the tarmac by the spring. That didn't happen. Arguably, that is because of ECHR law. So why is he actually stopping short now of just pulling out? He's got a lot of pressures from him on both sides of his party. This was an issue when Parliament was sitting. It is still an issue now. And there are Conservative MPs in those blue wall seats, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, for example, who tended to vote, those seats which tended to vote Remain. The Prime Minister is being very careful not to anger those constituencies while at the same time trying to keep his Eurosceptic MPs on board, which is why, and Eurosceptic candidates, I should say, on board, which is why we have this sort of fudge about the ECHR, which we saw just there.
Olivia, a familiar juggling act. Peter Edwards, turning to you now. Do you think, actually, the Conservatives want to leave the ECHR? They're just throwing this out there as a bit of red meat to appease the Brexiteers, but they won't actually ever do it, will they?
I think they want to not lose the election. I mean, all sorts of ideas have been thrown out by Tory backbenchers and dismissed as fantasy. Remember, 30 years ago, people said, we'll never leave the EU, and then it came to pass over several decades. The reason why I'm incredibly cautious and lukewarm about this is Rishi Sunak's relative weakness, and I think you both used the word juggling. You know, this does not come up on the doorstep. In the last 5 years, I've campaigned in Labour seats, Tory seats and swing seats. This has never come up, not even once. And we know in this election that it's immigration, cost of living and NHS waiting lists and things. So European Convention on Human Rights does not come up on the doorstep. Therefore, why is the Prime Minister talking about it? Answer, he's talking to his own side.
Or he's talking about it because maybe Nigel Farage is talking about it. But anyway, let's move on, because Sir Keir Starmer was scathing about the Tories' announcement earlier. He said it was a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto.
We have been absolutely clear that all our plans are fully costed, fully funded. We will not be increasing income tax, national insurance or VAT, so no tax increases for working people. None of our plans require tax rises. But this is coming from the party that's put tax to the highest level since, for 70 years. And they're building this sort of Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto where anything you want can go in it. None of it is costed. It's a recipe for more of the same, and that's why this choice of turn our back on this, turn the page and rebuild with Labour is so important. We've got 6 first steps, we're ready to go on July the 5th.
Well, that's what Sir Keir Starmer said in the last hour or so. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has also got stuck into the Tories. We're, of course, the People's Channel, so we went out and about in Wakefield earlier to find out what locals there thought about the Tory manifesto.
Absolute rubbish. Waste of time. When I look at the country, what it is now. I've seen over, I'm 84. I've seen the different governments. It's absolute rubbish. The promises are that they never come out. They don't come right with it. At the moment, I don't know exactly who I'm voting for, I'll be honest. I have voted Conservative. I've also voted Labour at times. I've also voted Liberal. At the moment, I have absolutely no idea.
I don't understand politics, but I think they're all a pack of liars.
I actually don't agree with politics whatsoever. They all make promises that they don't keep. And I've stopped voting, to be honest with you. I don't see a point, because they're all as bad as each other.
Absolute rubbish.
What makes you say that?
Well, look at the state of the country now. It's all gone to pot, hasn't it?
Last 14 years, through austerity years, they've been riddled with corruption. They've ridden the taxpayers' gravy train to infinity and beyond, and they've taken everything they want for themselves, and their country has suffered.
Well, there's loads to respond to there. There's disaffection amongst voters is astonishing. People seem furious with the political class. But before we get to that, Olivia and Pete, let's just rewind a bit. That astonishing attack by Sir Keir Starmer comparing Rishi Sunak to Jeremy Corbyn. Starmer backed Corbyn twice at 2 elections. How on earth can a Labour leader echo rattle the ghost chains of Jeremy Corbyn about a Prime Minister who's a Conservative?
Well, he's attacking his predecessor and the man Rishi Sunak he hopes to succeed. This, was clearly an off-the-cuff remark, but he'll actually be quite happy with it. 1, because we're talking about it. 2, because he got a jibe in against the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister is relatively weak. But 3, crucially, he's drawing a point of distinction between himself and Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. And remember this phrase we're hearing every hour on all channels, under Keir Starmer's changed Labour Party. The Labour frontbench are hammering home the point that they're different from the hard left, just as Tony Blair and Neil Kinnock would both pick fights with the far left of the Labour Party to make a point to the general voting public that Labour has come back to the centre ground. So I think we'll be quite happy with that.
But don't you think it'd be best just to bury the word? Don't even mention the Corbyn word, because every time it comes back, people start to think, well, you voted for that guy, you backed that guy twice.
Well, I think that might have been the strategy, but in the heat of a general election, when you're being attacked around the clock by the Conservatives, it's obvious that the word Corbyn's going to come up. So actually dealing with it, as Keir Starmer did, with a bit of a joke, with a serious political point about the Labour Party coming back to the centre, probably works OK, rather than just reading out a script about how he was campaigning for the Labour Party in 2017.
All right, and Olivia Utley, next, Rachel Reeves delivered a withering monologue. She went through Rishi Sunak's manifesto, said it was £71 billion of increased borrowing, blew it apart in a 5-point post-mortem. But she then compared Rishi Sunak to Liz Truss. I mean, make your mind up. Is he Jeremy Corbyn or is he Liz Truss?
Well, I think that the logic behind what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves were both driving at is that this manifesto is irresponsible. That's what Labour is trying to get at, that there's too much spending here and that, as they keep repeating, the money isn't there for it. Rachel Reeves's attack on the manifesto was pretty startling in that it very much seemed to come from a right-wing perspective, if you like. It was all about responsibility. It was all about the danger of this becoming too much spending, and so the Bank of England would have to raise interest rates, and so mortgage rates could increase for people. She actually put a figure on how much mortgages would increase, £4,800. Not exactly sure where that came from. Obviously, you can't work out in that much detail just how much this could end up costing. But essentially, this was a pretty cautious response from the Labour Party. It was all about the Tories spending where they don't have money. In fact, it sounded like a pretty small-c Conservative response to that manifesto. It'll be really interesting to see on Thursday what Labour have to say themselves, because so far they have been treading ever so softly. They know that they're 25 points ahead in the polls. They don't really need to say anything about what they're going to do. They only have to not be the Conservative Party. But on Thursday, they do have to publish some sort of manifesto. And what are they going to say about tax and spend? So far, they've said that they won't be raising any of the three major taxes, and they've criticised the Conservatives for too much spending. So is the Labour plan going to be, let's just carry on as we are?
OK, Olivia, Peter, stick with us, because there's another big story on the campaign trail today. And a man has thrown building rubble at Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. The incident happened in Barnsley, where Mr Farage was campaigning ahead of the general election. A man ran away before police officers tackled him to the ground, and it comes after a woman, of course, was charged with assault and criminal damage when a milkshake was thrown over Mr Farage in Clacton-on-Sea last week. Olivia Utley, there has been a pattern emerging now. First, a milkshake, of course, not the first time, 2019 in Newcastle on the EU campaign trail. Mr Farage was milkshake. This seems to be something more sinister, an upping of the ante, lobbing lumps of rubble.
Well, as you say, there does seem to be a pattern, and it does seem to be escalating. I mean, this is a pretty shocking incident, and actually, to give them credit, West Yorkshire, I think, police is investigating it very, very promptly indeed. It's all being looked into now. Let's just have a listen to what Nigel Farage himself had to say after the event.
I'll tell you what I'm worried about.
Let me just make sure it's the right one.
If you think about this, a week after we commemorate D-Day, which was done so that we could live in a democracy, where we can agree to disagree, we can be very passionate, but agree to disagree. What we've now got is a mob that want to close down all debate. A mob that are prepared to use violence to achieve their goals. And that, for a democratic country, is very, very worrying indeed.
Are you okay?
Me? Yeah. I'm used to it. I don't like it. Of course not. Because this is stopping me doing what I want to do. You know, I'm at my best going out, meeting people and talking to them, having debate with them. You know, going around the pubs or whatever I do. And these violent youngsters are stopping me. It's very, very frustrating.
It didn't hit you this time?
Didn't hit me this time, but yeah, I mean, you do wonder to what length these people will go.
So, Peter Edwards, Nigel Farage there making light of it, but do we need to have a conversation about the radicalised left? We hear all the time about the right wing, but look at what's happened since October the 7th in particular on the streets outside here. Parliament was basically barraged by people. The anti-Semitism on British streets has gone through the roof. Mike Freer left parliamentary office because there was an arson attack on his office, December 23. Radical leftists outside Labour Party, constituency MPs, officers. Now Nigel Farage targeted twice in a week. Do we need to talk about the radicalised left?
Any attack on a politician of any stripe is an attack on all of us, because it's an attack on democracy and our right to vote. Now, I don't agree with Nigel Farage on much. I think he's very divisive, but there is no excuse for violence at all. I would say there is a fringe element, sadly, in all stripes of politics, and it gives me no pleasure to say that. If you look at the counter-terrorism watch list published by, you know, the Home Office and the police and so on, they have a concern about Islamic extremism, but also about homegrown neo-Nazi elements on the right. But as you also said, we've seen some protests in London about what's going on in the Middle East.
But it's not the far right doing all these attacks
well, that was the point.
On Palestine. This is the far left.
I was coming on to the Saturday marches. Yes, it's legitimate to march for peace. It's legitimate to criticise another government. What we must not do is make Jews in London feel unsafe, and that is a worry. And that's why I think many of us feel the police could have been a bit more rigorous when a fringe element are shouting hateful anti-Semitic slogans in central London.
Does that soft policing precipitate itself in things like this? A lot of people on the political left were commentating they thought it was hilarious that Nigel Farage had been milkshaked last week. First a milkshake, then a piece of rubber. What next?
Well, no violence is hilarious, and it's a risk of a sliding scale. One can understand voters, however perhaps wrong, to chuckle over a milkshake, but it's still a crime because it's an attempt to harass and intimidate someone. As you said, the risk is something escalating. We all know the damage a rock could do, blindness, a head injury. It's sincerely my hope that this is just one isolated moron who's not particularly involved in politics. But obviously the thing that we pay the police and the security services to do is to look for political movements that have a more fundamental violent intent.
Superb stuff. Peter Edwards and Olivia Lee, thank you very much. An excellent opening to the hour. Just finish off pictures there on screen of that guy's now been apprehended, 28-year-old man. Now, moving on, animal rights activists have attacked a painting of King Charles. Yet more morons. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:26. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now to some incredible images. An animal rights activist have vandalised the portrait of King Charles. As you can see on your screens there now, campaigners from Animal Rising put a picture of the animated character Wallace from Wallace and Gromit over the King's face. They added a speech bubble with the words, "No cheese, Gromit. Look at all this cruelty on RSPCA farms." What can you say about that? Well, here's a man with a few choice words, no doubt. It's the royal correspondent Michael Cole who joins me now. Michael, what can you say about these people? Over to you.
Well, it was an act of puerile stupidity and utterly contemptible. These one-issue zealots, they demean themselves and they dishonour the cause for which they say they're fighting. I tell you what, Martin, if they tried that in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg and the Putin's police came in, I'd have a little bit more respect for them because they wouldn't be treated as gently as they are in a gallery in Mayfair in central London. The only good thing about this childish episode is that the brilliant portrait of the Red King by Jonathan Yeo was not damaged in any way. The King apparently thinks it's brilliant, and I think he's absolutely right. There we see them again. It's real student stuff, isn't it? They're lame brains. And I'm not even going to explain what they think they're doing and why they want to criticise the RSPCA, because that just gives them the oxygen of publicity. If they have a case to make, let them make it in a sensible, civilised way, and we might listen.
But, Michael, eyebrows will be raised, questions will be asked about the lack of security around this painting. It's one of constitutional importance. It's a favourite of the King. It's on public display. We know these pressure groups target things like this. It's pretty obvious, actually, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, this may have happened. As you said, there is perspex over the screen, but not a security guard in sight, not even a velvet rope. Michael Cole, this looks embarrassing for the gallery.
Yeah, I do. I agree. What's the cameraman doing there? Was it all set up? I mean, at least there are two cameras here because we're seeing the pictures, one camera shot, and there seems to be another cameraman there. Is he part of the stunt or not? Philip Mould, of course, is the man who appears on Fake or Fortune with Fiona Bruce. I'm sure most people have seen that programme. He's a very distinguished artist himself, I believe, and also somebody who knows a great deal about art and the value of it. No, it's nasty. And these things, I think, are counterproductive because anybody who might be willing or open to persuasion on this will be put off by it because it's vandalism. Let's call it what it is. It's utter vandalism. It's unnecessary. We live in a democracy. If you have a case to make it in a civilized way, not in a way which alarms and threatens other people and also damages property. Had that great picture been destroyed or damaged in any way, we would have all been diminished because it was painted by Jonathan Yeo for a specific place where it will eventually hang. But it's part of the story of this country, and it's, I think, probably one of the best portraits of His Majesty the King at any time during his life. So we could have lost a lot. It's really another example of what we saw with Nigel Farage today. Somebody's going to get injured. I was with Mrs. Thatcher on the road for 5 years. Her two detectives, they were brilliant guys. They were great at catching eggs, that you could have made an omelette by the end of the day in the battle bus because of the number of eggs they caught. And of course, we remember John Prescott rather reacting to somebody who wanted to throw something in his face. You'll remember that he reacted rather robustly. I think most of the country applauded him for doing it.
OK, thanks for joining us, Michael Cole. Wallace and Gromit, more like Wallies and Gromit. Always a pleasure, Michael Cole, to have you on the show. And there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. And I'll tell you all about Labour's plan to tackle the UK's dental crisis. And guess what? They're going to pay for it by scrapping the non-dom status. Fangs can only get better. But first, it's your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
top story this hour, Rishi Sunak says he isn't blind to the fact that people are frustrated with him as he unveiled the Conservatives' manifesto pledges today. His election promises to include another 2 pence in the pound cut to national insurance, a ban on phones in schools and a new Help to Buy scheme. Labour's called it an unaffordable recipe for more chaos. But speaking at the launch event earlier, the Prime Minister said he's offering a clear plan of bold action to cut tax.
Keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027 we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker.
Well, responding to the Tory manifesto, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves this afternoon said the Conservatives' plans will lead to a second Tory mortgage bombshell.
The Tories claim that they can make £12 billion in savings in welfare. But the truth is, that claim is simply not credible. It is true that under the Conservatives, the welfare bill has spiralled. Since 2019, spending on benefits to support disabled people and those with health conditions has risen in real terms by £20 billion. And under Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, the taxpayer has been losing £1 million every single hour to benefit fraud and error. That is their record. And there are savings to be made. But the idea that the Conservatives' proposals can save £12 billion is pure fiction.
Well, as you've been hearing, a protest group has vandalised a portrait of the King. 2 members of the group called Animal Rising entered the Philip Mould Gallery and stuck images to the painting from the animated series Wallace and Gromit. The group says it was calling attention to what it says is the poor treatment of animals on farms. It says they targeted His Majesty due to his position as a royal patron of the RSPCA. Those are the headlines. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Let's take a look at the numbers then for today. In the pound, buying you $1.2725 and €1.1852. The price of gold is £1,815.18 an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day today at 8,147 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly. Now, I've had a ton of comments come in already, and if you want to get in touch, simply go to gbnews.com/your say, and I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in North Yorkshire this afternoon to the south of Thirsk. The A19 remains closed through Hutton Cessy because of an obstruction. On Merseyside, the A572, the Southworth Road is shut westbound just off the A49 junction at Newton-le-Willows. Investigation work is still taking place following a serious accident that happened late last night. Meanwhile, the A46 Lincoln bypass stays closed between the Highcombe roundabout and the Wispy Road roundabout after a lorry caught fire and left a spillage behind. In Worcestershire, east of Worcester, the A44 is closed at Specially Park Gardens off the A422 because of an obstruction. And in Buckinghamshire, near the West London border, just west of Uxbridge at Ivor Heath, Church Road still closed following a 2-vehicle collision. And Southern trains are suspended from Havant to Chichester for an ongoing investigation. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application. You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... I mean, you know, everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, you know, that the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, you know, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course.
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what.
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:37. We're on the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, throughout the election campaign, we'll be hearing from people across the United Kingdom about what really matters to them. Issues such as the NHS waiting list, the impact of immigration, the cost of living crisis and crime and policing. Now, our reporters have been to meet voters from all 4 nations and we'll be hearing from them regularly before polling day. And today, for the first time, we meet Sam.
I'm Sam Richardson, I'm 29 and I'm from Falmouth. So in Falmouth and Truro, the Labour Party have the best chance at getting the Tories out, so I'll be voting for the Labour Party this year. Well, I would consider myself to be centre-left, to be honest. Food bank usage is up, there's a really bad housing crisis in Cornwall. Everywhere I seem to go, there seems to be shops closing down, the high streets are dying. And I just feel like most things have been really badly handled by the Conservative Party. So I think Keir Starmer's quite a serious man, which appeals to me. I think we need, especially at the moment, with the world in the state that it is, we need someone who can look at the books, make sure that the numbers add up. He's someone that I feel like, with his past as a human rights lawyer, I think that he's well suited to the role and well suited to the job at hand. I know that there's an argument that he's boring, but personally, I don't. What's wrong with boring? I yearn for the day where I don't wake up and worry about opening up my news app and saying something ridiculous that the leader of the country has said. It doesn't have to be this soap opera all the time. I don't know that we should ever support one political party anyway. I think we should have our own political opinions and then err towards whoever best represents those. I think that's a much better way of doing it instead of pledging allegiance like a sports team. When you're 19, there's a lot of future left, right? So I would say that I've actually probably seen more politically engaged young people. Whether or not that's around economic or social issues, it seems to be more prevalent now than personally what I've seen for a long time, especially with things like the climate crisis.
And with the People's Channel, that's Sam with his People's Voice. Lots more of those throughout this general election campaign. I love them. Now, a day after Labour unveiled plans to give free breakfast to all primary school children, the party's promised to introduce 100,000 extra dental appointments to clear the backlog. And our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has spent the day with the Labour leader and she joins me now. Catherine, breakfast yesterday and today it's dentistry and a war on energy drinks. Tell us more.
Yes, good afternoon, Martin from Lincoln. I was with Sir Keir Starmer and the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, this morning at a school where they were watching supervised toothbrushing. That's part of their Child Health Action Plan, and also announcing another 100,000 urgent dental appointments for children to take place, if necessary, at evenings and weekends, because Labour says that 500,000 fewer children saw a dentist last year compared to just back in 2018. The other thing they're announcing today is that if they get into government in, 3.5 weeks, as seems very likely at the moment, according to the polls, they will ban those very highly caffeinated energy drinks for under 16s. So, you know, the Red Bulls, those types of thing that quite often kids are quite partial to in their teens. They're saying they will bring in a ban on those. Keir Starmer was asked by broadcasters whether this wasn't all a bit nanny state. Let's see what he had to say.
The sort of state of the nation can be measured in many respects by the health of our children. It's in a terrible place. And I was shocked, genuinely shocked, to learn that more children go into hospital to have their teeth taken out between the ages of 6 to 10 than any other operation. I'm not prepared to simply stand by and let that happen, which is why we've championed, you know, supervised teeth cleaning. We've been watching that this morning. And I don't really care what people call it. If the price for a child of not taking action is losing your teeth between the ages of 6 to 10, that's a price that's too high, as far as I'm concerned.
So that's the message from Sir Keir Starmer. He doesn't really care if people think it is nanny state because he's horrified by the number of 6 to 10-year-olds going into hospital to lose their teeth. So basically, he says, bring it on if you're going to accuse him of the nanny state stuff. He really doesn't mind.
Well, thank you, Catherine Forster, live from Lincoln, giving us plenty to get our teeth stuck into throughout the day from the Labour campaign trail. See you again tomorrow. Now, a reminder of the big news that broke in the last hour, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been found guilty of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. We'll have the full story after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing. The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coasts with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:46. We're on the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, let's get more reaction to the Tories' manifesto, which came out earlier today. And as you'd expect, Lib Dem leader Ed Davey says voters simply cannot believe the Conservatives.
I think that people are going to feel that this is another broken promise that won't be delivered by the Conservatives. They promised tax cuts before, and we've seen tax rises. Taxes have gone up to record levels under the Conservatives, and actually, if you look at their budget forecasts, they're still freezing tax allowances for people, so taxes are actually going to go up under the Conservatives. And I think that that's the problem with Rishi Sunak's Conservatives. They try to make out they're going to help people, and they've made it so much worse for people.
Well, I'm joined now in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, you've been at Silverstone, you've motored it back, and you come bearing gifts. You've got
here we have it.
Manifesto.
This is the moment at which... This is the second moment of the campaign, if you're the Tory party. Can you see it there? Because what happens is they call the election. Yeah. That's the first moment. The second moment is the manifesto, because until that point, it's all just ideas and chatter. There's not a lot in it, Martin, we didn't know already. What's happened is the Tory party has been so far behind in the polls, 20 points behind, they've been milking it, mining it for ideas to try and get the polls going in the right direction. We know about national service, we know about the as of this week on national insurance, we know about the triple lock plus on pensions, not taxing pensioners on their state pension, income tax after 2028. We know all that stuff. That's all in here. There are bits and bobs in here, notably alleviation of national insurance for entrepreneurs, white van men and women and the rest who are self-employed by the end of this Parliament in 2029, if they get elected again. £17 billion worth of tax cuts, that's the offer. But I think, for me, I asked a question of the Prime Minister in Silverstone and called first. GB News was called first by the Prime Minister, which is a good moment for us to... Where's the bold action you need to get the polls going in the right direction? By which I meant ECHR withdrawal. Be bold, because that's what the Reform UK party are doing, and he couldn't go there. So it's a bit of safety first still, I think. But we have got now a document to go over for GB News viewers, and here it is.
And to use one final tortuous motoring metaphor
you have to, Martin? You love doing
of the day, I do. Will it rev the voters up, or is it just reheating what we already know? Rachel Reeves' astonishing attack on this, saying it's a desperate wish list, unfunded promises, channeling the spirit of Liz Truss, £71 billion. It will put £5,000 almost on everybody's mortgage. They've gone to war on this today.
Yes, they have. Now, the second document I should show you the viewers is a costings document. Now, this is very important because this is how Labour will be attacked on Thursday by the Tory party. And that's why Labour are going after it now. In here, there's a section called the welfare gap, tackling the tax gap. We've been through those numbers with officials from Downing Street. They're saying they can save £12 billion on the welfare bill by 2029-30. They say that it's gone up by then it'll be up by £18 billion on the pre-pandemic figure. So these are obtainable figures. You won't see Labour going after the welfare bill in the same way. That's interesting. And the tax gap, we know about that, don't we, when the tax evasion, tax avoidance plan announced by Rachel Reeves, that's £6 billion, say, by 29-30. So how they save the money to avoid putting up taxes is very interesting. And welfare reform is a line I'll be following through on Thursday.
But Rachel Reeves has said, actually, they've been through this same costings document, and they reckon that this will equate to £71 billion of increased borrowing. They say that the Conservatives' numbers don't add up.
Well, some of those numbers are a slightly finger in the wind. Certainly the tax gap can be overestimated by people trying to get big numbers to make your sums add up. You add a billion here, billion there, and pretty soon it's a lot of money. So that's what happens often in these numbers. That's why we'll be scrutinising that with the Tory party and with Labour on Thursday.
Superb. Chris Hope, always coming back here for a quick pit stop all the way from Silverstone, a final pun of the day. Thank you very much for getting back and sharing that with us. And let's get more now on that big breaking news that we brought you in this past hour, and it's this. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been convicted by a jury of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. And I'm joined now by the US political journalist Laurie Laird. Laurie, it's always a delight to have you on the show. A huge story. Tell us the ramifications.
Yeah, we do talk a lot about presidential figures and court cases and convictions, don't we? But yeah, Hunter Biden convicted of, as you said, gun charges and whether he could have had the possession of these guns because he was on drugs at the time. His defense was he had been clean for a very short period of time. Clearly, the jury did not buy that, and it didn't take long for the jury to come to a conclusion. Only 3 hours, and in fact, we understand that they took the vote this morning. It was 11-1. There are 12 jurors, one holdout, but it only took 3 hours for that dissenting vote to fold. So a pretty quick verdict. I think the next thing we'll be looking for is what is his sentence? He could be looking at a maximum of 25 years. Now, no one thinks he'll get that maximum. This is a first conviction. But the feeling is that he probably is going to see the inside of a jail cell.
Yeah, and it could be, as you say, 25 years. It may take 3 months to reach that verdict. And, of course, Hunter Biden's woes aren't over. He will still face a fresh tax case after this one, Laurie Laird. And the big question is, will this have any impact? Will it be politicised in the massive presidential race we have coming up ahead of November the 5th?
And that's the question, isn't it? And should Hunter Biden's sentencing for this one could come in October, right before that November 5th vote. Those tax trials in California begin on the 5th of September. So he will be mired in legal things in the run-up to the election. The golden question, does this matter? And it's a big question. I think that as journalists, we tend to really cover these things. I mean, they're fascinating, but there wasn't a whole lot of evidence that Americans were following the Trump trial all that closely. So there'll be even less interest in this Biden trial. But it does give the Republicans a stick with which to beat the Democrats. And it creates an opportunity to sort of set some kind of equivalence with Donald Trump's conviction and Hunter Biden's conviction. Now, we had these loose talk of an impeachment investigation against Joe Biden. I think talk of that may pick up. And that's the last thing that Joe Biden wants to see in the headlines in the run-up to November.
Great stuff, Laurie Laird. Always a delight to have your opinion. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Now, I've got time for a quick couple of emails before we finish the show on the topic of Nigel Farage. Jane says this: I'm disgusted by the person who threw a brick at Nigel Farage. He could have been seriously hurt if it had gone over the bus or ricocheted off the side. It could have easily hurt a member or hit a member of the public or even a small child or baby. What on earth is going on in their heads? And on the topic of the Animal Rising protesters vandalising the King's portrait, Jason says this: these people should be jailed for at least 5 years or they will never stop. And Darren has this, a fair point. I'm wondering how these protesters even got that giant roller into the gallery past security. Or Darren, indeed, where were the security? There was simply no security. They just rocked up to it and put those big stickers all over it. So we've got another quick email here on Hunter Biden. President Joe Biden will probably pardon his son, says Brian. Well, that's all from me for now. Jubes & Co, of course, is up next. That's 6 till 7. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thanks for all of your thoughts. Been a very, very busy day. Has Rishi Sunak managed to change your mind on Manifesto launch? That's a big topic. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, but that's your weather, and it's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud out there today. Some of that cloud giving sharp showers, particularly in the east. But the showers will tend to ease later as an area of high pressure begins to move in from the west. However, we've still got, ahead of that high, a cool northerly airflow that's particularly notable across northern and eastern parts of the UK, with limited temperatures through the afternoon and quite a lot of cloud, with showers running into the east of England and northeast Scotland. Those showers will tend to become restricted to coasts overnight, and many places will end up drier, with clear spells developing The longest clear spells in the west, where temperatures in some shelter spots could dip to 3 or 4 Celsius first thing Wednesday. However, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing. Some decent sunny spells for much of central and western Scotland. Some cloud affecting northeast Scotland as well as the central belt and southern parts, but otherwise it's mostly dry, and Northern Ireland sees some patchy cloud but dry conditions as we begin the day. A few showers into the western part of Wales and Cornwall. Otherwise, for much of England and Wales, fine weather continuing, but always a chance that we'll start the day around North Sea coast with showers, and those showers will develop more widely across the Midlands, eastern England and the southeast through the afternoon. A few sharp showers once again are possible. In between, some drier and brighter interludes, but towards the west, as well as for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a dry afternoon with sunny spells and lighter winds, so feeling more pleasant even if temperatures are still suppressed compared with the June average, coming in at 17 or 18 Celsius. Wednesday evening sees clear spells for a time, certainly across central and eventually eastern parts, but in the west the cloud thickens, and then on Thursday a band of rain crosses the country, followed on Friday and Saturday by heavy showers.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems southeast of Thirk do continue in North Yorkshire, of course. The A19 remains shut through Hutton Cessy, where an obstruction is being dealt with by emergency services. The A46, the Lincoln bypass, remains closed between the Highcombe roundabout and the Wispy Road roundabout after a lorry caught fire and left a large spillage of diesel all over the carriageway. In Worcestershire, east of Worcester, the A44